Now let's get back to more about the foreclosure mess and what it means for the housing market. Joining us now is real estate attorney Adam Leitman-Bailing. We also have Shari Olefson, real estate attorney with Fowler, White & Boggs. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Adam, let me start with you. What do you make of this whole mess over foreclosures? What's going to be the impact?
First of all, in the short term, this is very good for stabilizing prices. Less homes are going into foreclosure, meaning there's less inventory going on the market. The less inventory flooding the market means that existing homes will stabilize their prices. Once foreclosures actually go through and they start flooding this market, prices have to drop.
Shari, do you agree with that? Because many take the other side, that the foreclosures are inevitable and the so-called hidden inventory overhang glut is going to drive down prices in the future. Where do you come out?
I agree, Larry. I think that this is going to create more problems than it's going to solve. I mean, it's going to scare a lot of people who are thinking about buying a home and keep more people on the sidelines now. The last thing we need in housing is more uncertainty, and what this creates is uncertainty because no one really knows how the judicial system is going to handle this. I mean, the fact is that these affidavits were designed also to protect lenders, to make sure that the lender who was entitled to be foreclosing and who was entitled to the money from the foreclosure sale got paid that money. So, you know, these systems are in place. They don't work anymore. There's no systems to replace them.
That's window dressing. That's not the problem. That's window dressing. All this is you have people that are not disputing that they owe the money. All the banks need to do is get their documents in order. Someone owes the money on the loan. They need to fix them up, get the right signatures on it, figure out who owns them, and continue with the foreclosure process.
Okay, so Adam, isn't this actually hurting the banks, though, in the near term?
Yeah, it hurts them in the near term and it hurts them in the long term. In the near term, they can't get paid. The banks are losing money every day. People are drinking champagne.
It hurts everyone.
That owe money. People are drinking champagne because they are living free in their homes and the bank gets nothing. So bank credibility gets hurt, and who eventually gets hurt? Us, we the consumer, because that means credit will tighten, banks will be going out of business, and we need to get this moving. The good news, this is a short-term problem. We need to repair the problems, get the right people, signing the right documents, knowing who owns the mortgages, and we could probably continue this within 60 days.
I don't know, Shari, do you agree with that? It doesn't? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, here's the thing, in terms of a little background, Melissa, the time frames that these foreclosure mills have to accomplish the foreclosure within and the price caps that are set on how much they're going to get paid per foreclosure were actually set by banks and the GSEs for a reason, so that these foreclosures wouldn't take too long and they wouldn't cost too much money, because at the end of the day, the borrower is the one who often ends up paying these fees. In other words, the foreclosure attorney's fees are tacked on to the final judgment, particularly in a recourse state, and the borrower's responsible. So if we look at fixing this system, you know, this is why it's so ironic sometimes when a judge requires a bank's attorney to go back and redo something or amend a complaint, because at the end of the day, you know, as we just said, this money is owed. No one's disputing that the money is owed. It's just a matter of who it's owing to. And really, all that does is add to the time frame and the money that eventually the borrower is going to have to pay in attorney's fees, the amount of time the
municipality. Do we really think the borrower is ever going to pay it, Shari?
No, that's exactly right. The borrower will never pay. These people took out mortgages. They knew they were never going to be able to catch up. 90% of them are never going to catch up. Therefore, it doesn't really matter how much is brought on. The banks are losing. They're never getting paid. Time is money.
Don't we want to just clear the system? Isn't the whole idea that we need to clear the system as quickly as possible?
The point is we have to decide if it's worth creating this perfect system that at the end of the day is just going to pay more money to the lawyers to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, or fix it so that it is better in line with the way mortgage securitization works today.
Maybe in our next life, by the way, everybody who buys a home will have to put 20% down so we won't have this darn problem. Adam, let me go back to you. Fannie and Freddie, what's their role in this robo-signatures screw-up and all the rest of it?
They're actually on the sidelines in this. They're quasi-guaranteeing all the loans. This is now, what happens is when a bank purchases a loan, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are basically guaranteeing it. So this is now the banks need to get their shop in order. Someone owns each loan. We got to figure out who owns it and continue the process.
What do you think is the long-term consequence of this, Shari? I mean, when we look at...
Well, this is horrible.
Everybody's hoping.
This is horrible.
Okay, hang on, Adam. I just want to get Shari in here for a moment. Shari, I mean, what is the long-term consequence? We all keep hoping for this recovery in housing. You say it's going to delay it. By how much?
Well, in the long term, I think that this will obviously delay some of these cases where the judges make the lawyers go back and amend the complaints, but a lot of it depends on how the judges handle it. I mean, a borrower can file a motion to vacate their judgment, and a judge has a choice of either allowing that, but allowing the bank to still go back and amend and foreclose again the correct way, in which case it's going to cost a lot more money, or a judge may have discretion to allow the motion to vacate and then not allow the bank to go back and refile again, in which case you're going to have a bunch of borrowers jumping on board to try to have their judgment set aside.
But Adam, can I ask you real quick before we go, because everyone thinks, you know, all of us here on CNBC are really mean and we're rooting for the banks and stuff. When they hear that foreclosures have been stopped in 23 states around the country, they think that sounds like a great thing. People will get to stay in their homes who are desperately trying to hang on to their homes. Is there any way that's true?
Sure. The amount of people in their homes that they get to live for free should be buying expensive champagne because they don't have to pay any money to live there. However, for you, most of the Americans that want to have affordable housing, this is horrible. You can't afford housing, the average American, and therefore you're not going to be able to afford to do construction and alterations and buy TVs for your new home and all the traditional home products. What we need to do is we need to move this market along, get out of this hangover, get through these steroids, and get better and get healthy. And this is another infinite in that.
Okay, I was just checking.
I don't think you're asking for much there, Larry.
20%.
Thanks for joining us.
20% down payment. That is my great desire to change the whole nature of the borrowing and lending and purchasing relationship.
Back to basics. Back to basics. Right.